Her smile, her name, it was known around the world. Yet what we know of Farrah Fawcett was only a fraction of who she was.
I'm constantly surprised when people give me titles like that.
For decades, Farrah Fawcett has remained one of Hollywood's most unforgettable icons. A woman whose smile, spirit, and strength seem to defy time itself. Yet recently, something unexpected has happened. Her name is suddenly everywhere again, trending across social media, resurfacing in headlines, and sparking emotional conversations among fans who never thought they would see this level of attention return so powerfully. And the reason behind this renewed fascination is far more surprising than anyone could have imagined. It all began when a newly uncovered piece of Farrah's personal history quietly emerged online, a discovery so intimate, so deeply heartfelt, that it instantly captured the world's attention. Fans, journalists, and even former colleagues found themselves revisiting her life, her career, and the emotional legacy she left behind. What followed was a wave of nostalgia mixed with shock, as people realized there was still so much they never truly knew about the woman behind the iconic red swimsuit poster. But it wasn't just a rediscovered interview or a forgotten photograph that reignited the conversation. What surfaced shed new light on Farrah's final years, revealing untold acts of courage, hidden struggles, and an emotional truth she kept private until the very end. The revelation has left fans speechless, not because it changes who Farrah was, but because it shows just how much strength, sacrifice, and love she carried with her through her most difficult moments. Now, as millions revisit her story with fresh eyes, one thing is clear: Farrah Fawcett's impact didn't end with her time in Hollywood. It's only growing stronger. What was uncovered has reopened hearts, revived memories, and reminded the world exactly why she remains one of the most beloved figures of her generation. For years, Farrah Fawcett's legacy rested peacefully in the hearts of those who adored her. She had become more than a television star. She was a symbol of an era, an icon whose smile lit up the 1970s and whose courage defined the later years of her life. Her fans believed they already knew her story. They believed everything had already been said, every memory honored, every detail told. But all of that changed just a few days ago, when something unexpected happened. Something powerful enough to bring Farrah Fawcett back into global conversation. That it began quietly, with a single social media post from a small archival account dedicated to preserving rare Hollywood history. The post contained a grainy, never-before-seen clip recorded during Farrah's final months, a clip that had been misplaced for years. At first, it was just a simple upload, one among thousands, but within minutes, it exploded. Shares multiplied, comments flooded in, and across multiple platforms, Farrah Fawcett's name began trending with a force no one saw coming. In the clip, Farrah wasn't acting. She wasn't posing for a camera, preparing for an interview, or playing a role. She was simply speaking, softly and candidly, about the one thing she always kept private: how she truly wanted to be remembered. It wasn't dramatic or rehearsed. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, painfully honest. And that raw truth hit millions of people straight in the heart. For the younger generation watching the clip for the first time, it was a revelation. Here was a woman they had only heard of in passing, a vintage face on posters, a historical figure from their parents' time, suddenly speaking with a depth, warmth, and authenticity they couldn't ignore. For older fans, the clip became a bridge back to the past, reviving memories they thought they had buried long ago. They remembered watching her on Charlie's Angels, following her interviews, admiring her courage as she faced one of the toughest battles of her life. What nobody expected was why the clip resurfaced. A retired video archivist from a Los Angeles studio had recently passed away, and while his family was sorting through his belongings, they discovered a box labeled only with a date, and the initials FF inside were several tapes, photographs, and notes he had saved over decades of working in television production. Most of the material was routine, but one tape stood out: a personal recording of Farrah during a private moment on set, captured when cameras were still rolling, but long after the official interview had ended. His family, not understanding the significance, donated everything to a small Hollywood preservation group. Weeks later, A volunteer digitized the tapes, and the moment the Farrah clip played on his screen, he froze. He knew instantly that this was something rare, something emotional, something the world hadn't seen, something Farrah had never shared publicly. But even he couldn't imagine the impact it would make. Within 24 hours, the clip had millions of views. News outlets picked it up. Celebrities reposted it with their own memories of Farrah. Fans around the world began revisiting her documentaries, her interviews, and her most iconic roles. Search engines saw her name skyrocket to the top of trending lists. Suddenly, everyone, from longtime admirers to those who barely knew who she was, wanted to know more about what she said, what she meant, and why this moment had remained hidden for so long. And just like that, Farrah Fawcett wasn't a memory anymore. She was a conversation, alive again in the hearts of millions. But what exactly was in that clip? What did she reveal about her life that the world had never heard before? And why did her words strike such a powerful nerve across generations? Those answers would soon unfold, and they would be far more emotional than anyone expected. As the world continued to replay the rediscovered footage, something unusual happened. Viewers didn't just watch the clip, they studied it. They slowed it down. They analyzed every tremble in Farrah's voice, every subtle expression that hinted at the emotional weight behind her words. Because the message she shared wasn't loud or sensational. It was quiet, personal, almost whispered, as if she wasn't speaking to an interviewer, but directly to the people who had followed her journey for so many years. The clip began with Farrah sitting in a simple chair, looking tired yet peaceful. There were no bright studio lights, no stylists hovering nearby, no makeup artist touching up her face. It was just Farrah, natural, unguarded, and gently smiling. She looked down for a moment, as though gathering courage, then lifted her eyes and said something that instantly captured the world's attention. "I hope the world remembers my heart, not the headlines." That single sentence became the starting point for an enormous wave of emotion. Fans began sharing the clip not for its novelty, but for its humanity. Farrah wasn't talking about fame, beauty, or the glamorous chapters of her career. She wasn't reflecting on awards or milestones. Instead, she spoke about simple truths, about love, kindness, and the quiet intentions she carried throughout her life. She continued, explaining that throughout her career, she often felt misunderstood. The media loved her image, the perfect smile, the feathered hair, the effortless charm. But Farrah revealed that behind the scenes, she spent years trying to prove she was more than a poster on a dorm room wall. She wanted to be seen for her talent, her intellect, and her compassion, things that rarely made headlines, but meant everything to her. What struck viewers most was her vulnerability. Farrah admitted that the pressure of being a global icon sometimes left her feeling isolated. A symbol is admired, but not always understood. A poster is displayed, but never listened to. For the first time, the world heard Farrah speak honestly about the emotional cost of being an icon, a cost she carried quietly, without complaint, throughout her career. But then the tone of the clip shifted. Farrah leaned forward slightly, her voice softening even more. "I want people to know I tried, truly tried, to live with purpose, to love deeply, and to leave something behind that mattered." That line stopped millions in their tracks, because this wasn't the voice of a celebrity making a statement. This was the voice of a woman reflecting on her life with a rare, disarming clarity. Her words didn't sound rehearsed. They sounded like truth, the kind of truth people only reveal when they no longer feel the need to impress anyone. As the clip continued, Farrah spoke about her charity work, which she rarely discussed publicly. She mentioned the quiet moments when she visited hospitals without cameras, supported children's programs, and funded educational projects anonymously. These were the pieces of her life she kept hidden from fame's spotlight, the parts that mattered most to her, yet remained unknown to the world. And then came the moment that truly stunned viewers. Farrah paused, took a breath, and with a soft smile said, "If people remember anything, I hope it's that I didn't give up. Not on life, not on love, not on myself." Those words hit with a force no one expected. They reminded fans of her greatest battle, one she fought with unmatched courage. They reminded them of the strength she displayed, not just as an actress, but as a human being facing the most difficult chapter of her life. The clip wasn't about her illness, but about her resilience, the quiet, unwavering determination she carried until the very end. As soon as this portion of the clip circulated, something extraordinary happened. People from all over the world began sharing their own memories of Farrah. Stories surfaced from fans, from individuals she helped privately, from colleagues who never shared their experiences publicly. Each story painted the same picture, one of kindness, humility, and a deep sincerity that few ever saw beyond her glamorous exterior. This wasn't just nostalgia, it was rediscovery, and the world wasn't done uncovering. And yet, she kept showing up. As the footage continued, Farrah spoke candidly about the pressure of fame, how the world expected her to remain forever flawless, forever smiling, forever strong. She admitted that there were nights she cried alone, moments she doubted herself, days where she wondered if she could ever escape the role the world had assigned her. But she always pushed forward, driven by a determination that seemed to come from a deeper place than fame or career. Strength, she said softly, isn't about being unbreakable. It's about refusing to stay broken. That single line resonated with millions. People shared it as a quote, printed it in posts, wrote it across photos, and turned it into a symbol of hope. Suddenly, Farrah wasn't just being remembered. She was becoming a voice for anyone who had ever struggled in silence. But what came next was even more surprising. Toward the end of the tape, Farrah opened up about someone incredibly important to her, someone she rarely discussed publicly, her son, Redmond. She spoke of her hopes for him, her fears, and the deep love she carried for him every single day, especially during the periods when life pulled them apart. She admitted that the hardest part of fame wasn't the criticism, the pressure, or the loneliness. It was the fear that her son might grow up remembering the world's version of her, instead of the mother she truly was. "I want him to know me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Not the image, not the poster, me." The vulnerability of that moment stunned everyone. Farrah had always protected her family fiercely, keeping her private life shielded from the spotlight. To hear her speak so openly, so emotionally, was a revelation that added a new layer of depth to the icon the world thought they understood. When the tape ended, viewers sat in silence, overwhelmed, emotional, and completely unprepared for the raw humanity they had just witnessed. Because Farrah wasn't just reflecting on her career, she was revealing her soul. Within hours, hashtags about Farrah's rediscovered tapes dominated every major platform. People wrote essays, tribute videos, and heartfelt messages about how her words strengthened them. Younger generations, who knew her only as an image from a different era, suddenly saw her as someone real, someone vulnerable, someone wise, someone deeply human. And yet, this was only the second tape. Two more remained, and insiders hinted that one of them contained something truly unexpected. A message Farrah left intentionally, something she wanted the world to hear. Someday. And that someday, it seemed, had finally arrived. The world had barely processed the emotional depth of the first two tapes when the preservation group announced that the third recording was unlike anything they had seen so far. The label on this tape was unusual. Instead of the archivist's handwriting, this one carried Farrah's own, delicate looping, unmistakably hers. And beneath her initials, she had written a single word, "Someday." That one word alone sent chills through the preservation team. It suggested intention. It suggested purpose. It suggested that Farrah knew this message was not meant for her time, but for a future moment, a moment she trusted would eventually come. When the footage began to play, the mood was different from the previous tapes. Farrah was sitting indoors this time, in a quiet room filled with soft light. A window behind her let in the glow of a late afternoon sun. She looked calm, not tired, not emotional, but peaceful, as though she had reached a place of acceptance. She folded her hands in her lap, took a gentle breath, and began speaking directly into the camera. "If you're watching this," she said softly, "then it means I'm not here anymore. But that's all right, because I'm not gone." Those opening words hit with a force that left viewers speechless. Farrah went on to explain that she recorded this message during a period when she was reflecting deeply on her life, not with fear, but with gratitude. She said she wanted to leave behind something real, something meaningful, something the world could hold onto long after she was no longer physically present. People remember faces, she said, but they forget the hearts behind them. So I want to tell you who I was, not who Hollywood said I was. What followed was a side of Farrah the world had rarely seen. She spoke about her childhood in Texas, the shy, artistic girl who dreamed of becoming a painter long before she ever imagined being famous. She talked about her early struggles in Los Angeles, how she walked to auditions with empty pockets and hopeful eyes. She admitted that her sudden rise to fame terrified her at times, because she never felt prepared for the level of attention and scrutiny it brought. But the most surprising part came when she revealed what she considered her greatest achievement, and it had nothing to do with acting. My greatest accomplishment, she said with a soft smile, was learning to love myself. Not the version the world adored, but the woman I saw in the mirror when the cameras turned off. It was a message of self-acceptance, one that resonated across generations. She spoke of the mistakes she made, the lessons she learned, and the strength she found in forgiving herself. She encouraged viewers to embrace their own imperfections, reminding them that flaws were not failures, but proof of being human. Then, with a shift in tone, Farrah addressed something she had rarely spoken about publicly: the misconceptions people held about her final years. She clarified that while her illness was a battle, it did not define her. What defined her, she insisted, was the love she received from those closest to her and the purpose she found in advocating for others facing similar struggles. I wasn't afraid, she said, not because I was brave, but because I felt loved, truly loved. Her voice grew softer as she prepared to close her message. If this is my last gift to the world, she whispered, then I hope it reminds you of this. Life is shorter than we realize, but love lasts longer than we can ever imagine. When the tape ended, there was a stillness, a silence so deep it felt almost sacred. People watching it described the experience as though Farrah had reached across time to speak directly to them. For many, it wasn't just emotional, it was healing. The release of the third tape didn't just revive interest in Farrah Fawcett. It redefined her legacy. It reminded the world that behind the iconic image was a woman of wisdom, heart, and extraordinary depth. And yet, there was still one final recording left in the box, a tape that preservationists warned contained something even more personal, something that Farrah never intended to be public. What happened next would shock everyone.